Welcome back to the Arden Yoga and Wellness Podcast. In this week's video and episode, I'm going to be going through questions that we received via social media and also a few questions that I've been getting frequently via direct messages and with clients that I've had and just people reaching out to me. So head on over to today's video and we'll go through a little Q&A. All right, you guys, welcome back to the Arden Yoga and Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Kira. So in today's episode, I'm going to be answering some questions that I got via Instagram. One of the things I'm going to talk about today is actually something that I've had quite a few messages directly about recently. And anytime that happens, I try to address it, I guess you could say, anytime something's frequently coming up with clients or even friends. So that's what we're going to do today. I didn't really have anything this week that felt overly compelling to talk about. I've got a couple of guest interviews that we'll have towards the end of the month. And the past few episodes, I've really been super kind of excited about what I wanted to talk about, specific topics, specific areas. And today and this week, I just didn't really have anything I was feeling overly pulled towards, but I also love doing these. So I've got about 3 or 4. I'll try to keep track of time today because I always try to keep the podcast pretty short and sweet. So the first question that I have gotten, this was the question I was talking about that didn't come in through a direct or through the Q&A that we did, but I have been getting a lot of people recently reaching out about this. And this is how to become a yoga teacher and how to pick a teacher training. When I became a yoga teacher, I did it like 13 years ago. So things have significantly changed in that world. At the time, you had 200-hour teacher trainings and 500-hour teacher trainings via the Yoga Alliance. So that was kind of the governing body at the time. And I did not go through a Yoga Alliance program. And the reason for that was I had such small children. And at the time, a decade ago, you would go every weekend or 1 week in a month, or you could do these intensives where you would go somewhere, for a month. And that was just not in the cards for me. And keep in mind, when I started my business, Facebook was still really new. That was before Instagram. That was before Pinterest. None of the online world existed. If Zoom existed, I didn't know about it. I don't know if it existed back then. And so it was not something that was going to be doable for me and my family. And even the financial commitment, I couldn't commit to at the time. So what I did, because of my background in nursing, and I already had such a great background of anatomy and physiology per all of my schooling before nursing school, and then obviously during nursing school. Then after I got done with nursing school, I went back and did a wound care certification to become a certified wound care nurse. And so that was even more extensive study and curriculum over the human body and muscle systems and connective tissue. And so I knew I had that covered. I also knew that I could keep people safe because I was a nurse. And so what I did was I kind of filled in the gap. So I did multiple teacher trainings that were online, that were shorter. And then I did a lot of in-person workshops. Being so close to Nashville, one of the great things is there was a really great yoga community at the time. And I could do a lot of different, more focused workshops to fill in those gaps of knowledge that I needed. If I could do it over, or if I wasn't in the season I was in, would I have done a kind of more formal teacher training? 100%. It was just something that it would have, like I always say, I would have had to say no to my newborn and toddler and also my business to say yes to that. And it wasn't something in that season of life that I felt like was going to be doable for me. So that was kind of where I was at. I then went on to do a yoga therapy program, which is similar but very different because it's considered part of the healthcare team. And it's a lot longer in some states and universities. Now they offer a master's program in it. So that was the route I did. And I knew that I wanted to go a more clinical route. So it ended up not really being that super relevant if I had a Yoga Alliance certification, just because my governing board is the International Association of Yoga Therapists. And one's not better than the other. It's just very different. So all of that being said, I just wanted to kind of paint a picture of what I did. So somebody reached out to me last week or the week before and just was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing yoga teacher training. How would I even decide which one? And so what I said to this was, I think it's really important when you're choosing a yoga teacher training, even if you don't have any intention of becoming a yoga teacher and doing that, not necessarily as a career, but doing it, for a financial return as a job. Some people just like to do it just to deepen their knowledge or to be submerged in that experience and that setting. Especially a lot of times when people really first get into yoga, they're so excited about it. And they want to do something that is just a deeper dive, right? And so what my advice is to take a lot of different classes, not a teacher training. I think it's really important to figure out what kind of yoga and what styles you like first, because there's so many different things to choose from. So that's where I would start, is going, what kind of yoga do I like? And then you can kind of go, okay, this would be something I might want to teach, right? Because if you don't want to teach hot yoga, do not do a hot yoga teacher training. That's, and so figure out what kind of yoga you yourself really enjoy, because that's something you're more likely to want to teach and not get burnt out on. The next thing is think about what kind of teachers and their style that you gravitate towards. That's something really important, because you want to study and be taught by someone that has a teaching style that you yourself are attracted to, because that's how you're going to learn. So for me, I love very, very sound and direct anatomical references when it comes to how I'm being taught and how I teach. One thing I always tell my clients is I own a car, right? I know how to put gas in it. I know how the check engine light works, but I'm not the mechanic. I'm not going to drop the oil pan and change the oil in my car. That's the mechanic. My clients don't need to be an expert in anatomy and physiology. That's where I come in, but they live inside the body that they're moving in all day. So they need to have a general knowledge of it. Okay. That was the type of yoga practitioner I was and still am, is I live in this body. I want to know why it works this way. I want to know what connects to my shin bone if this feels off, And so I knew that was what excited me. And so I knew that was how I was going to want to teach and learn. So figuring out the type of yoga that you really like, and then also what teachers do you really like working with, because that's somebody that you would want to invest your time in as far as teacher training goes. I also don't think that people need to rush I think when it comes to a teacher training, figure out what style, but go teach everything. Before I became a yoga therapist and specialized in what I specialize in now, which is one-on-one therapeutic yoga. Specifically, I work with people that have aches, complaints, concerns in their body that are chronic or acute. And then also stress management that's secondary to pain cycles and having issues with their mobility. But before that, I taught it all. And if you ever had a membership to my studio, or ever took classes with me, you will know we offered it all. I have taught branches of Iyengar yoga. I have taught prenatal yoga. I have taught mommy and me yoga. I have taught restorative yoga. I have taught power yoga. I have created classes that were a yoga sculpt fusion where I brought in weights. I mean, when I tell you, I have taught a workshop for everything, and I have led a class in just about every style of yoga. And that really helps me figure out what I didn't like teaching. There are classes that I can teach, but just because I can teach it doesn't mean that that's the class I'm meant to teach, because I'm not going to lead people as well as I would if I'm leaning into something that I feel like is more in my lane and something that excites me more. Because when you figure out which ones excite you more, and that's why it's important to try a lot of different things and you're teaching, that's going to be the thing that you're the most excited to keep up with from a continuing education standpoint. It's going to be the one that you're always figuring out a better way to do something and what props might serve your clients better. And so take a lot of different classes, teach a lot of different classes, and that's going to help you niche down if you decide that's what you want to do. I also will say there's a lot of different post-COVID, so many things went online, and the yoga teacher training world really had to evolve because they had to keep their trainings going. I mean, if you're a studio or anybody and that's part of your services and your income, clearly you've got to figure out how to make that work when people can't see each other in person. When I was at Vanderbilt, everything went online because we couldn't go to Nashville. So totally understand the reasons behind it. And because of that, now there's a lot of different programs that you can do online that are really great. One, if you're somebody like me who really loves a research-backed, anatomically focused type yoga style, I think Yoga Medicine is great. The founder of it, the founder of Yoga Medicine, is a Chinese medicine doctor and acupuncturist. I'm pretty sure. She might have a master's. I don't know if she has a doctorate. Not that that matters either. And they're not accredited with Yoga Alliance. And so it's like, and their training is great. I've done a lot of continuing education and online courses with them, and they're phenomenal. So I'm not saying you've got to do Yoga Alliance, but just, look into anybody you're going to give your money to. So the next thing is, how do you know what supplements to take? All right. So this is something I get questions about all the time. And there's so many different ways I could navigate this. But one thing that I think is important for us to look at in the beginning is supplements are meant to be supplemental. So they're meant to come in and cover an area that's not being covered, whether it be your diet, whether it be absorption issues in the body, whether it be maybe just a season of depletion for whatever reason, and we need to get levels of something back up to their original state, and then we can discontinue the supplements. So that we're not meant to live off supplements. And I think that's one thing that has made me a little bit apprehensive as of late in the online space and with clients that I've seen. I don't know if you really need to be pounding a green powder when you could just eat vegetables. If you don't have a huge intolerance or allergy to a vegetable, then you can just eat your vegetable. Now, if you're like, I'm in a season where I haven't had access to this, or I haven't been eating as many, leafy greens lately. I haven't. It's winter. Then maybe you do that green powder. But I think, again, we have to remember supplements are not always, they're not meant to sustain us. They're meant to fill the gaps. Another thing about supplements, when somebody says, okay, what supplement should I take? I go, I have no idea, because I don't know if you're even deficient in anything. So that's why, as I always say, get blood work done. One of the greatest things about Western medicine is we don't have to guess. We don't have to aimlessly just kind of throw darts at things and see what works. We can do imaging and look at things inside the body, and we can do blood panels. We can do stool samples. We can do hair samples. So if you're feeling crappy or you're feeling off, consult with your primary care provider, and then maybe get some blood work done. That way you're not wasting a ton of money to take supplements and pee them out. If it's a water soluble supplement or vitamin that you don't need, you're just going to pee it out. You're just paying a lot of money to have it go right back out. And then also with your fat soluble vitamins, so your ADEK, you don't want to needlessly take those because those don't go out through your urine. Those will deposit themselves in fat, and you can build up a surplus of that your body doesn't need. So that's again why I don't suggest just taking rando supplements. Another thing about supplements is they're not regulated. And you guys know how I feel about certain things. I'm not saying the FDA by any means gets everything right. But when you're following people, or if somebody suggests something, if they're selling a supplement, then that means they're probably getting a kickback off of it. Are they really taking it? Has there really been great research done behind it? I don't know. But those are things to consider. There's a reason why I have never worked with any company. I don't endorse anything. I don't sell anything. I don't because that starts to add another level of what we suggest. That can be a huge conflict of interest as a provider. So my suggestion, if you're going, how do I know what supplements to take? Don't go in blindly and just start supplementing. It can be a huge waste of your money. And it can also, it can throw off your labs. Something that I always look at if I'm looking at a health coaching client's labs are if their liver enzymes are off. I go, have you been taking new supplements? Because just blindly taking supplements just because it's natural and it's a supplement and it's not a pharmaceutical, it doesn't mean that it's safe for your body. And it also doesn't mean it's needed. So I would say, why am I thinking I need to take a supplement? Is there something that doesn't feel right in my body? Is there something that's had a significant shift in my body? Is there something dietary wise that I have an allergy to that I cannot take in that is keeping me from maybe absorbing some of these vitamins or minerals that I need? And then if you're wanting to continue on with down that path and figuring it out, see your primary care provider and get a blood panel done. And then you can see if you're lacking anything. And then once you go down that whole avenue, then you can do a deeper dive into seeing exactly, what there's a lot of different complexities there of how you need to take supplements if you're going to absorb it well. Like, for example, if somebody has GI issues, if somebody's got Crohn's, even if somebody just has irritable bowel syndrome, an oral B12 supplement might not work for you because the way B12 specifically is absorbed is through these certain cells in the gut. And so if the gut's compromised, it might be better to take an injection. So I know I'm not directly answering, anybody's specific questions because I would need somebody's chart in front of me. But this is all of the things I'm saying are to get your wheels turning about the conversation around supplements and how frequently people are just trying to supplement for everything. It should be looked at no different than anything else in your health and wellness. It should be done through a customized, tailored conversation and experience with a trained medical provider. So that's my take on that. I hope I answered that. I know that was I kind of rabbit holed on that one and went on a tangent, but it happens, Okay, so the next question that came in quite a bit, or a question kind of around this conversation, was ways to reduce stress. And I answered this on one of the online things that we got a couple weeks ago, but I'm going to address it here. So ways to reduce stress. So one thing that I would say when you're looking at stress is this stress something that is acute or chronic? So acute would be something that is new and has a shorter lifespan. Chronic would be, is this something that frequently comes up and that has been really consistent in my life? We'll say 6 months or more. And then once you figure that out, you've got to go, okay, what are the controllable variables here? So is this stress or stressor something that I can remove? If it's something that you can remove, then you can get rid of the stress causing incident or relationship or factor, right? But let's say it's something that's either something you can't remove or it's those unpredictable stressors, right? So if it's something that's acute and within your control, or even chronic and within your control, you can go, okay, this is something that's affecting my quality of life, this stressor, and I need to do something about it. So what type of support might I need to make changes to where this is something that's no longer occurring in my life? So maybe it's a job and you need to look at how you could change your hours. Or maybe it's a relationship and you know that that's something that has caused you a lot of turmoil and stress and you need help navigating around that. So maybe that's where you get a health coach or a psychologist or a counselor to help you navigate that. So if it's something that you have a certain level of control around and could be moved around or could be completely removed, look for support, okay? Especially if it's something that's been reoccurring and you haven't been able to address it on your own and get significant traction in that change, then that's when I would say, okay, let's figure out support. The other thing is, okay, people always say, okay, well, how do I, get rid of stress? There's just certain stress that you're not going to get rid of. If I've got clients, let's say it's Tuesday, typically on Tuesdays right now, I see 5 clients in a row. So I'll do an 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, all one-on-one yoga therapy clients. If something happens that morning and I'm late, it literally throws every time slot off. Okay. Even if it's 5 minutes, then not wrecks, but it changes the whole dynamic of my workday and for my clients. But can I control if there's a traffic jam? Can I control if there's a tractor with 80 round bales of hay in front of me going 5 miles an hour out in the county where I live? No. So what we can do, though, is figure out how we build up our resilience to stress. A lot of times it's not the stress that's the issue. It's our lack of stress resilience. It's our lack of coping skills that are healthy, that we've learned and that we can implement when needed. That is the bigger issue, because you're always going to have certain levels of stress. You're always going to have uncontrollable variables that come up. You're always going to have people that quite honestly just suck. There's always going to be people that you have to interact with, whether it's family or a coworker or just somebody who's had a terrible day at the post office that you're going to interact with, or you're going to have that wreck on the way to work and you're going to be late and then you've got to backtrack all of your meetings. It's what tools do I have in my tool belt to make sure that I can, to the best of my ability, have a resilience to these stressful situations? And so to that, what I would say is figuring out maybe breath work. Breath work is a huge thing for me. So regulating my nervous system through breath work practices. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, we've got a couple of videos on our website for it. And then I also have done a couple of podcasts, kind of the breakdown of why breath work is important and how it works in your body and how it works for your nervous system. So breath work is a huge one. Movement is a huge one. There are so many reasons why, if you are stressed out or you've had a stressful day, going on a walk and getting outside is going to serve you so much better than scrolling on your phone or stress eating. So movement is a huge, huge way to help build up your stress resilience. And then also, I think always support. And support does not always have to be somebody paid and outsourced that way. Support can just be, as we say in recovery. When I say recovery, I mean all the different groups that I did for my eating disorder back in the day. They always say, find a few safe people you can trust. And so have a couple of people, in your back pocket that if you're not able to work through a stressful situation on your own and maybe breath work's not working and you're like, I need to talk, a few safe people that you can trust, that you can, kind of offload a little bit, process. Another great tool for stress resilience is writing things down. And notice I didn't say journaling because I hate journaling. And I think it's just I was born in the late 80s and grew up in the 90s. And every time I think of journaling, I just think of like a Lisa Frank journal with a lock on it and like Dear Diary. And so I have this huge adversity to journaling. I cannot stick with it. I've tried. It's not for me. However, I do love writing things. I like notes. I like notes in my phone. I like writing things down. And there's significant power in that. And there's tons of research on this. And I've done a podcast on this as well. But the reason that writing things down and journaling is so profound and helpful is because once you articulate your thoughts on paper, and then once you can come back to them with a different frame of mind when you're not in that storm of feelings, once you can come back to it with a bird's eye view, it really can let you kind of sift through what is still there and what was just because of my stress and the way my body and my brain and nervous system was reacting in that moment. And so I think writing things down also helps build up a certain level of stress resilience because it allows us to start to learn the way our brain responds to stressful instances. It's almost like you can track it. You can look back and you can go, I reacted this way the last 5 times. Or this was something that I did twice that I wrote down made me feel better. Maybe that's something I need to look at a little bit closer. So I think those are just some things that you can try out and see what works. But definitely figuring out a way to build up your resilience to stress, because as we all know, stress and being overly stimulated is not going anywhere in the world we live in. So we have to figure out how to exist within it. Yeah. Okay. So I have one more that I'm going to just run through really, really quick. If I can, I've got if you're watching, I have one of my bookshelves behind me. I got favorite books, but this one is really tricky because what does that mean? I'm an avid reader and I read all different things. And so I think on this one, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I'm actually going to do an entirely different podcast on my favorite books that have been transformative for me in my adult life. Because there are so many that I can think of, but I want to have the time to talk about why that book was impactful and in what season of life or maybe headspace it could be helpful. So I don't think that I would do that question justice if I went through it right now, because I would have to do it in about 60 seconds. Okay, well, those were the top questions and conversations that have been sent my way as of recent. There was a lot more, but that was all I could get to today. So I'll try to do one maybe next month for sure. But I do love doing those because it really helps me see where everybody's at and what's coming up for people. And that helps me, kind of guide where the podcast needs to go and the ways that I can support everyone. So with that, I'm wrapping up. Thank you. Always thank you for tuning in and listening. I am always surprised that people listen to my podcast. I mean, that's the whole goal, is for people to listen. Otherwise, I could just talk into a mic that's not plugged in. But thank you. Thank you for all of you that send me messages and send me your feedback of your thoughts and how the podcast lands with you and specific episodes. Thank you for sharing it. Thank you for all of you that rate and review it, whether you listen on Spotify or Apple. Thank you for the reviews, because that really helps us rank higher and it helps other people find the podcast. And again, that's the point. So thank you for that. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Bye.